And then it's time for our next featured reader, Patricia Ace, born in 1969, spent her childhood in England, the Middle East, and Canada before studying English and drama at the universities of London and Glasgow. An early love of acting translated to creative writing when she settled in rural Perthshire to raise a family. Inspired by Philip Hobsbawm's support, she sent out her work, and her poems have been published in a great number of magazines and anthologies and have found success in many international poetry competitions, including those run by Ms. Lexia and Aesthetica. She has been longlisted in the National Poetry Competition 3 times. She has collaborated with other artists on many occasions and was a founder member of all-female poetry collective Lippy Bissons, who staged poetry cabaret shows during the mid-noughties. A pamphlet, First Blood, came out from Happenstance in 2006. In 2008, she completed a master's in creative writing at Glasgow University, for which she was awarded a distinction, and went on to publish her first full collection, Fabulous Beast, in 2013. 2019 saw the publication of In Defiance of Short Days, and The Lido at Night was published by Red Squirrel Press in this year, 2021. She has taught yoga in community settings for 20 years and is qualified as a yoga therapist. Her writing is primarily concerned with the relationship, whether within the framework of the family or between humans and animals, plants, and the natural world. Sex, gender, birth, and death are recurrent themes, as is motherhood, mental health, and transition in all its forms, but especially in the lived female experience. And after all this, I wanted to add a reflection of my own, of course, Patricia, to your work as well. Um, and I found your poems like stories, and some were, I'd say, homely about daughters or neighbors. Some are about childhood. Some are like little adventures, like your poem Heaven on the Seventh Floor. And one poem ended on the line, frailties of being human. And to me, that seemed, just as with Vicky, I found a line that sort of described the whole of her work. To me, in your work, this would be the line that I think really nails what your work is about. And to me, that is exactly what your poems explore and celebrate. And there seems to be an ironic distance as well as a fierce love for everything that makes us human, and more so everything that lives, from 16-year-old classmates to mating frogs. And there's another, from toads to frogs, I say, is maybe a theme of tonight. So, Patricia, of course, I have the same question I asked Vicky. I want to ask you, in the spirit of St. Nicholas and the Dutch tradition of surprises, how has poetry surprised you?
Well, when you sent me the question, Miller, a couple of quotes came to mind actually. And one of them is from Robert Frost, when he said, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. And the other was E.M. Forster, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? So I do think surprise is a really important idea in writing poetry, because it's quite easy to embark on a poem thinking, I want to write about this, I know where I'm going, this is what I want to say, a kind of poetry sat nav, if you like. But as somebody else once said, and I couldn't find who said this, but they said, no one likes a poem that has designs on it. So again, if the poet is trying to kind of lead us in a particular direction, it can not work so well. So I think you need that element of surprise for you as a writer, otherwise you risk it falling flat for the readers. The sat nav may get you there efficiently and effectively, but without the sat nav, you might get lost, you might end up on the coast in a lovely little bar watching the sunset, having a few cocktails, dancing a salsa and meeting the love of your life. so I think we all need, the element of surprise. And, often when I've written a poem, oh, that's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm thinking. I almost don't know what's going to come out until you start delving into that subconscious. And, it's a more successful poem perhaps when you end up somewhere completely different to where you started out from.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think a very true answer. So thank you for that insight. And of course, now we want to hear more from you. So go ahead.
Thank you. The Chicago L. Riding the green line from Harlem to 51st Street, through neighborhoods so ransacked and run down, they smack of footage of war zones. The teenager in the corner, who may be high on crystal meth, she has that energy, that volume, has a mouth like a sailor. She's shouting a stream of filth at her male friend who's older. It's N-word this, N-word that, bitch, motherfucking N-word the other, punctuating her ravings with bitches and N-words until the other passengers cower and flinch. Then she's on to arse fucking and sucking dick. I don't know which bit of me is offended most. The egalitarian, the feminist. The old lady behind us mutters her outrage to the stranger beside her. Parents with young kids ride for a few blocks, disembark. The girl's friend gets off downtown. She plugs in headphones, slumps in the corner like a winded boxer. Thank you. So I guess it's kind of this, the times we live in, I'm sure many people will kind of relate to that experience. We live in this age of anxiety, really, fear. That's what's motivating these kind of things, violence, shouting, and generally losing the heed, as we would say in Scotland. And I mean, fair enough, there's a lot of stuff to get angry about. But I do think we need to be a little bit mindful about our impact on others. And I think, they're finding out now that with this kind of herd species, well, we've always known that, but the effect of the energy of one person, it transmits through a group. So the more this is kind of transmitting around the world, the more difficult it gets. And just because you've got a different opinion to somebody else, then it just doesn't make it okay to abuse them or threaten them. So that was kind of where that one was coming from. And this one is kind of the downsides of being an intelligent, sensitive person in this chaotic and confusing world. And about virtual communication, which we've all had to get used to in the past couple of years, but it doesn't really match up to being able to hold a hand or give someone a hug. So this is about my daughter. And the title of the poem just runs into the first line, so I'll just go straight in. Rainbow hat, one of many you wore in your teens, as if the brain that gave you straight A stars, that double first in grapes, needed to be earthed, contained. All shades of the spectrum, Richard of York gave battle in vain. You, like me, adore the bright colours caught between sun and rain. Tonight, on Skype, from 3,000 miles, you are anxious, frayed. Too many thoughts fighting for space. How to live in the world without harm, how to fit it all in and still give back, find enough time for self-care. I watch you exhale through your mouth, soothing with sighs, over and over again. I show you the hat I found in your room. You ask me to keep it so you can wear it to pride. I think of the woman in my chanting group who wears only white, who wraps her head in a turban to stop the energy rising too high. So a lot goes on in a middle-aged woman's life. Children leave home, or quite often not these days, which is a different sort of challenge. Working life is often at its peak for a woman in midlife. Elderly parents may be moving back in to the family home. And as if that didn't give you enough sleepless nights and anxiety, then the menopause arrives just right on time. So I watched this David Attenborough Blue Planet TV program, and it was about a fish, a type of sea wrasse fish. And when it got old enough and big enough, it could change sex from female to male. And it said thereby reducing the ability of the dominant male to monopolize the female. So I thought, oh, this sounds like quite a good idea. So in these days of gender fluidity, you know, why not? So I've written this in the voice of a trans wrasse, and it's called Kobudai. And it's got an epigraph at the top from a poem by Sylvia Plath called Mirror. And Plath's poem says, "In me she has drowned a young girl, and in me an old woman rises toward her day after day like a terrible fish." When I reached a certain age and weight, estrogen switched to androgen, and I became mannish, grotesque with swellings, a boffin head, a jutting chin. You could say I lost my looks, but I've always admired the joli lids, the pockmarked and gapped-toothed, the freaky girls with a sharp sense of humour and something between their ears. The dominant male is losing his grip. I emerge from the kelp-strewn wreck in search of the patient females. Barnacled like treasure chests lost to the depths, they wait for the clip of my radar. All I live for now is the thrill of lineage, my million offspring laid in the dark and the drift. My scales turn silver pink, my glands brim with milk. Thank you. So this one's quite surprising. I think it surprised me again when I wrote it. It's called Wet Dreams. Well, I think of that as a kind of male experience, but interestingly enough, there isn't a word or a description for the female experience of that, really. So that says quite a lot in itself, really. Wet dreams. There are the usual fantasies, A-list celebrities, the plumber, but most bodies loom faceless, just torsos and limbs, pricks standing proud, twitching like divining rods. Some are disconcerting, best friends, pet dogs, a father or sister conjured during catnaps from which you wake red-faced and sticky, stunned by the mind's tricks. And once a young woman, a tongue unknown, her hair an oiled rope slung down her back, her fingers long and slick, balling her hand into a fist. So one of the good things about getting older as a woman is that you're not as afraid anymore to say what you really think. You just get to a stage where you've lived quite a long time putting up with all this bullshit and you don't care anymore what other people sort of think about you. So you can get a bit more brave and outspoken, I think. So I'm going to read this one for Vicky because, well, her poems gave me permission to speak, which is the biggest gift. And this poem is called It's Just a Phase. You're in your powerful woman phase, Vicky tells me, as I hurtle towards 50, hormones a go-go. There is power, believe me, in reclaiming your autonomy after years of being known as someone else's mummy. And there's power, for sure, in this startling last hurrah, in knowing who you are and not being afraid to own it. in not giving a flying fig what other people think. You're 50, for pity's sake. You've earned it. Okay, so I'm just going to finish with a poem from Amsterdam, if that seems appropriate. And it's about women and art. And I think the artist Vicky was thinking of, was it Marina Abramovich, Vicky? Yes, she's going to come on. Yeah, I think it was.
It's Marina Abramovich, yes. That
yeah.
was out of my head.
Yeah, because she features in this one as well. So we must be channeling her spirit tonight. Okay, this one's called Museum Blues. In the basement section of the permanent exhibition, the feminism room comes last. Having moved through Bauhaus and the Amsterdam School to abstract expressionism, viewers walk through fast, en route for the cafe, saturated, disengaged. The women's art is scant, small in scale, quiet, easy to miss or ignore. From those who pause comes mocking laughter, the same in any language. A woman's voice scoffs, "It doesn't do it for me." I sit on a bench, listening to the moans of Marina Abramovich, panting, "Art must be beautiful. Artist must be beautiful," holding brush and comb, literally tearing her hair out. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for your poetry. And I mean, gender fluid fish. How wonderful is that? And I think you also have a first of a poet making someone spit out their wine. Check the chat. Yes.
Oh, well, that was a surprise then.
Yes. All in the spirit of Saint Nicholas. So thank you so much.